Growing up, most of us had toys that we played with to help us in our evolution from children to adults. But imagine if one of those toys took on a life of its own and started scaring the living out of your entire family. Well, today's stories are about just that. But before we get into them, hello and welcome to back-to-back horror stories, where we tell you a few different strange and or creepy stories back-to-back.
If you end up enjoying this video, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, let's get started. On Christmas of 2019, in Houston, Texas, lived a family called the Madonias. We have Emily the mother, Matt the father, and Aurelia the daughter, and other children who I don't know the names of. When Aurelia was about a year old, she received a present, and it was an Elsa doll. Elsa is the Snow Queen in Disney's Frozen, for those of you who might be unaware. The doll had a necklace on it that when you pressed it, it would sing "Let It Go" in either Spanish or English.
Ojalá jugáramos en la nieve todo el tiempo. Hacer magia con nieve juntas es muy divertido. Magia con nieve juntas es muy divertido. A mi hermana Ana y a mí nos gusta jugar en la nieve.
Emily and Matt started to notice that the doll would start randomly singing on its own, even when it was turned off. So because it was old and they figured it was just short-circuiting or something, they decided to throw it away. Matt put it in a garbage bag with a bunch of other garbage, and then he put it outside in the garbage can. Fast forward about a week or so and everything's going great. Emily and Matt were looking for something in their house when Matt opened up a big wooden bench that was in their living room. The Elsa doll was sitting right there as soon as he opened it. He started yelling, and so Emily came in from the other room. They were looking at each other like, what the heck? Like, that doll was definitely thrown away. And there's no way that the kids were going to rummage through the garbage to find a doll that was barely working. So they decided to ask the kids if they just so happened to do that, and the kids were very confused about this. After this, Emily and Matt argued about who was going to touch the doll to get rid of it, and somehow it ended up being Matt. Poor Matt. But he got it in a garbage bag and put that garbage bag in another garbage bag and tied it tight, and then he took it outside to the garbage can again. He then stuck it underneath a bunch of other garbage to make sure that this time it won't get out. 2 weeks later, the Madonia family would be scared out of their minds. Emily posted this on Facebook on January 9th of 2020. Okay guys, seriously, we need help. To recap for those of you who have not been following our Elsa doll saga, Matt threw it away weeks ago, and then we found it inside a wooden bench. Okay, so we were weirded out and tightly wrapped it in its own garbage bag and put that garbage bag inside another garbage bag filled with other garbage and put it in the bottom of our garbage can underneath a bunch of other bags of garbage and wheeled it to the curb, and it was collected on garbage day. Great, right? We went out of town, forgot about it. Today, Aurelia says, "Mom, I saw the Elsa doll again in the backyard. Help us get rid of this haunted doll." And this is the picture with the post. And underneath of that, she made a comment saying, "Guys, I would love nothing more than for this to be a practical joke. The only options are 1, someone dug it out of our garbage. Ew, but how did they do that with the can at the curb waiting for the garbage truck? 2, a different doll? Doubt it, it's 6 years old." And then a friend of hers named Chris Hogan replied by saying, "WTF, mail it to me. I'll put it up in my shop. It'll be friends with the creepy doll that hangs out on top of my earplug dispenser." I'm not kidding. So Emily then responded with, "I will mail it to you tomorrow. PM me your address." Chris Hogan is a family friend who lives in Minnesota, and he decided that he would take the haunted doll away from the Madonias. They happily agreed and sent it to him the next day. When they packaged the doll inside of the box, Emily said this, "One more thing I wanted to mention. When we put the doll in the box, it laughed for about 30 seconds. It has never done that before. Sometimes it would giggle for a second after saying one of its catchphrases, but it has never laughed like that before." So Chris decided to play a little prank on them and send them pictures of an empty box without the doll in it. But he did receive it, just sits on the brush guard of his Jeep, with about a quarter-mile of gorilla tape. And as of now, there haven't been any paranormal things that have happened. Yet. But if that Elsa doll just so happens to find its way back to the Madonias, they might want to run.
If you have a fear of haunted dolls, well then don't worry, because this story isn't about a doll. It's about something far worse. A haunted teddy bear. And not just any teddy bear, of course, but a teddy bear that lives in a castle. Or lived, rather. But we'll get to that. Before we officially begin our story, though, for the sake of context, let's travel back to the Middle Ages. A time filled with kings, queens, and fantastic superstition where real and unreal danger lurked around every corner at all times. In the mid-12th century, an English family of Norman heritage built up a castle in a place called Derbyshire. And despite the fact that the design was beautiful and it turned out great, the only thing they neglected to realize was that the site at which they built the castle used to be home to an ancient burial ground in a town known as the Satanic capital of Britain. And so as you can guess, this place was haunted as hell, and also probably cursed. But only a short time period after being constructed, the Peverell family lost the rights to the castle following the death of William Peverell the Younger, and it came into possession of the King of England. Then, following another major dispute by the Ferrers family, who claimed the castle was part of their territory as the Earls of Derby, which was the main town of Derbyshire, the building was laid siege to in a huge battle and largely destroyed. And by the way, the Ferrers family actually did this with the permission of the King of England, which is sort of confusing because while he did own the castle, he wasn't actually in control of it. Instead, there's just a random guy named Brian living there, who, as a soldier, was loyal to the king, but I guess he just got unlucky. Regardless, following the castle's partial destruction, it was rebuilt once again on top of the remnants during the years 1611 to 1617 by a father-son architect duo including Robert and John Smithson. And they did this on behalf of the castle's new owners, the Cavendish family. And don't worry, at this point, it was definitely already showing signs of being haunted. In fact, during the late 17th century, when people dressed like this, there had apparently been several mysterious incidents that occurred on the property, including doors slamming on their own, people feeling like they had been pushed and pulled, and some even claiming that they'd had their ankles grabbed. Which, if you've ever been around a toddler, you know full well how irritating that can be. In recent years, however, the Bolsover Castle, which is what it's called, has become a haunted tourist location, and the security guards that work there have countless stories of their own involving strange and otherworldly activity. Some of them have seen what they can only describe as a little boy holding the hands of visitors as they walk past. Others have seen the spirit of William Cavendish, the previous owner, drifting through the halls, and one guard even claimed that during a night when she stayed late to lock the place up, she heard a screaming that became increasingly louder and louder, and when she finally ran towards it, it suddenly stopped. Now, there are a series of different exhibitions throughout the castle that one can visit, and in 2017, a new one was temporarily added. It featured a haunted teddy bear by the remarkably creative and inconspicuous name of Mr. Ted. Before becoming part of the exhibit, Mr. Ted belonged to a psychic medium by the name of Debbie Davies. According to Debbie, the teddy bear has been known to growl throughout the night and to cause illness to those that come near it. Of course, Debbie herself is actually a pretty well-known figure in the paranormal community, with her specific interest being in creepy haunted dolls. But she's also pretty well-rounded in everything else as well. Nevertheless, after she sent Mr. Ted to Bolsover Castle, 3 women by the names of Denise, Rebecca, and Maria volunteered to stay overnight in the vicinity of the bear on behalf of the British morning TV show This Morning. And by the way, if you're British, you're probably already familiar with it. In addition to these 3, a paranormal expert by the name of Joe Lockwood and the producers of the show kept watch in a nearby room with monitors to help pick up on any potential activity. Meanwhile, as they did this, Mr. Ted himself was placed upright on a chair overlooking the girls as they laid down flat on a bunch of beds. They also used a spirit box in order for him to directly communicate with them, which, based on what happened next, may have been something that they regretted later on. Now at first though, there really wasn't a whole lot of activity going on. They set things up, made sure the equipment was in the right place, got comfy in their beds, and just waited there nervously. But as the night went on, strange things started to occur. Only 30 minutes after monitoring the girls in their beds, Joe Lockwood spotted a ball of energy on one of the screens, and then as the girls began to fall asleep, he saw a flickering light directly next to the chair on which Mr. Ted was sitting. Now, having been a paranormal expert, Joe was able to remain calm for a while, but around 3 a.m., things really took a turn for the worse. Before I explain exactly what happened though, I think we need to talk about the significance of the single hour between 3 and 4 a.m. So historically, this particular time of the day has been associated with a lot of supernatural events. It's said to be the time whereby witches, ghosts, demons, if you believe in those sort of things, are at their most active. And also, some would argue, at their most powerful as well. In fact, as far back as 1535, the Catholic Church prohibited any sort of activity during this time frame. It was seen as an inversion of 3 p.m., which Catholics believed to be the time of Jesus' death. And coincidentally, this inversion, which is known as the witching hour, just so happened to be the time during which the 3 willing participants at Bolsover Castle, along with Joe Lockwood, experienced a sudden power outage. They have no idea what caused it, but around 3 a.m. during that night, everything went dark. The equipment, the monitors, the cameras, everything. Immediately, Joe alerted the producers of the show. They went in there as fast as possible to check on the girls, and luckily they were perfectly fine, but the power cord that was feeding electricity into all the devices had been pulled out as if someone physically removed it. Now, once the producers re-established the connection, the girls began to hear the spirit box picking up frequencies again, and so they shouted at Mr. Ted, "Show yourself!" To which he responded, "Leave." Following this first engagement, they then asked him to come closer, and remaining defiant, he replied, "No." And at this point, they were so spooked that they ran completely out of the entire building. And thus ended the overnight stay of the 3 girls at Bolsover Castle. And for the most part, they came out unharmed. But as for one of the producers, a man named Harry, he was not so lucky. In fact, within a 24-hour period of coming in contact with Mr. Ted, he was rushed to the emergency room. And unfortunately, he didn't make it. Possible to dispute that Mr. Ted had any powers, but he did make a full recovery and survive. Don't worry, Harry the producer will be fine. Now, as for the haunted teddy bear himself, Mr. Ted, well, in the end, his owner Debbie Davies made the fateful decision to bury him 30 miles away from their home, which in my humble opinion was probably for the best. All right, guys, that's gonna do it for us today.
If you like this video and you want to see more of our content, our TikTok and our Instagram account is in the bio.
Also, if you have any idea for content you'd like us to make in the future, please let us know in the comments below, and it could end up being in a future video. Thank you for watching.